Welcome to Securing America with me, Frank Gaffney, the program that's dedicated to protecting the country we love against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to the glory of God and His kingdom. Securing America is becoming more challenging by the day for reasons we will be covering in detail every weeknight in this new time slot. I want to thank Rob Sigg, his son Parker, and their superb team at Real America's Voice for making it possible for us to give you ready access to many of the best minds offering the clearest assessments of the challenges we face as a country and a civilization, and how we can translate the opportunities thus created to preserve our way of life and advance freedom. And for those of you accustomed to listening to us on Secure Freedom Radio, no worries. You'll be getting the same outstanding intelligence briefings on what I call the war for the free world under our new brand, Securing America. The war for the free world seems apt to me because, as my old boss Ronald Reagan used to say, quote, every generation faces an existential threat to freedom, unquote. He observed that it had to be fought for, defended, and passed on to our children to do the same. Well, our time's existential threat to freedom is upon us. In fact, today we face an unprecedented array of adversaries, both foreign and domestic, who seek nothing less than the destruction, on our watch, of what President Reagan correctly described as the last best hope of mankind, the United States of America. These adversaries are relentlessly waging unrestricted warfare, including the spiritual kind, to take America down. Should they succeed, Judeo-Christendom, Western civilization, and what's left of the free world would be unlikely to survive. Consequently, we are fighting for the highest possible stakes, and that makes our conversations with you incalculably important as we expose and analyze such threats and discuss what we must do about them. I think of this program as a kind of owner's manual for protecting our country, with a special emphasis on what you can do to help securing America. There are just a few examples that I want to go over with you about what we're up against and will be addressing with your help. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is destroying Ukraine, a nation that is, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, a part of the free world. True, it's not a member of NATO, nor part of the European Union. And it may suffer from corruption, as do most other nations, especially Russia. But no nation will be safe, including ours, if tyrants around the world are emboldened to act on their respective aggressive agendas by seeing Putin literally getting away with murder. That is especially the case since Putin's goal is not simply to conquer Ukraine. He seeks to dominate Europe. His threats to do so with force are increasingly backed by the capability to act on them. But even in the absence of further violent Russian attacks on, say, the Baltic states, Poland, Romania, or other NATO nations, Putin is intent on dominating the continent by exploiting its growing dependence on his country for energy. It is in our vital interest and ability to help counter that strategic peril. Meanwhile, China's dictator Xi Jinping has been watching closely how his ally Vladimir Putin fares with the invasion of Ukraine and the costs it entails, as he contemplates pulling the trigger on aggression of his own against Taiwan, either through non-kinetic coercion or actual force. If Putin succeeds in destroying Ukraine and ending its sovereignty, you can bet that Xi will feel irresistibly tempted to do the same to the Taiwanese and their de facto independence. If the Ukraine crisis teaches us anything, it is that every effort must be made to deter invasions before they happen, rather than applying punishments afterwards in the hope of limiting the damage. Unfortunately, deterrence of a Chinese attack on Taiwan is being undermined by arguments advanced to date against resisting Putin and his invasion. One nation that is no longer willing to wait to see how Ukraine plays out is Iran. It has carried out several attacks using ballistic missiles whose warheads landed in close proximity to the U.S. consulate in Erbil, Iraq. Such behavior makes completely unacceptable the further maniacal pursuit by the Biden administration of a nuclear agreement with the mullahs. This project proved to be a fool's errand during the Obama years, and with many of the same people leading the charge under both presidents, no good has come of it this time around either. In the process, however, billions of dollars have flowed to Tehran. Of course, neither those bribes nor the multilateral diplomacy that spawned them has translated into an actual end to the nuclear threat from Iran's regime. To the contrary, it is assiduously working to put into place all of the elements for a deliverable nuclear arsenal, from advanced centrifuges, ballistic missile developments and tests, and presumably underground nuclear experiments, thanks to Iran's friends in North Korea. If, as a result, the Ayatollahs do not already have nuclear weapons that are good to go, they surely will in the very near future. In short, we live at the moment in a world of hurt, especially if Vladimir Putin is seen as succeeding with his plan to use force to impose his will on Ukraine. Still, other rogue regimes, perhaps including Kim Jong-un's in North Korea, the Pakistanis, the Taliban, Turkey, and the growing cohort of communist governments across Latin America, will probably be tempted to exploit the Biden team's evident weakness and irresolution to their respective benefit. We can hope that the invasion of Ukraine and the mugging by reality that it has entailed for a lot of nations, especially in Europe, will jar them into adopting the sort of robust war footings we must get on. If that happens, and if vigorous American leadership practicing Reagan-esque peace through strength is once again forthcoming, we just may be able to defeat our time's array of existential threats to freedom. The alternative is clearly unacceptable. Should we fail to overcome the combined malevolence, violence, and spiritual warfare now abroad in the world, we may well be condemned, as President Reagan warned, to, quote, telling our children and our children's children what it was like to live in the United States when men were free, unquote. That must not be our fate. We hope you will join us each weeknight, resolved to fight with the vision, tenacity, and courage of those who came before us, and bequeathed to every American our legacy of freedom, so that we will pass it on to the next generation to do the same. I want to welcome now Dr. Stephen Bryen, the former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense. He's been a congressional staff member and a defense contractor. He has been of late our senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy, and he's one of the brightest guys I know on a whole host of issues involving our national security. Steve Bryen, it's good to have you with us. Welcome back.
Nice to be with you, Frank.
I want to start, if I could, very quickly, we've only got a minute or so before we have to take a short break, by just asking you, looking at how the Biden administration is conducting itself, Steve, vis-a-vis Iran, in the throes of endless humiliations that they've been dishing out to us, and not least now, firing missiles in very close proximity to our consulate in Erbil, Iraq. Can they construe what we are doing as anything but just absolutely abject and contemptible groveling to get a deal? And if so, what can the possible good of it be?
Well, the Biden guys are very anxious, that's an understatement, to make a deal with Iran. I mean, they pledged to do it before they were elected.
Hold that thought, because that's exactly where we're going to pick up right after this.
Real America's Voice presents War Room with Steve Bannon.
People have legitimate questions. They want to see data. They want to see evidence.
Don't miss War Room every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern